You wanted to extend all day. Oh, I've got 6:30. Good evening. I call this meeting of the Big Rapids Planning Commission to order. Miss Emily, would you give us a roll call, please?
Of course.
Can't hear you.
Thank you. Mike's on. I don't know if you can hear this or not. Yes.
Yep.
While they're fixing it, Miss Emily, will you give us a roll call, please?
McLeod. Here. Boozy.
Here.
Jane.
Here.
Epley. Here. Ruddick is excused. Thompson. Here. Montgomery.
Echoing.
Yeah.
Hey, would you guys join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
So unfortunately, Chris, just before you start, the system we have runs with the microphone off of that. And if you do these microphones, then there's a conflict. That was the echo you heard. So board, we're gonna just all have to speak up, and public, when you get up, all have to speak up because we can't run both systems. So sorry.
Okay, would you guys join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Did the commissioners get a chance to review last month's minutes? And were there any corrections? If not, I would take a motion to accept those.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, that motion has passed. Is there any public comment tonight that is not related to items on the agenda? Okay, and just so everyone knows, we have one public hearing on the agenda. It's about some proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance. So if anyone has any public comment not related to that, we invite you to use the podium. You can state your name and your address so that we've got it for the minutes, and try to limit your comments for brevity.
My name is Crystal Weibel. I live at 830 Marion Avenue. I guess it's more of a question to the board is we were just wondering if we could get an update on the status of Christ Oil. You guys set some parameters for them to meet, and we have not been notified if anything has been done since that last meeting. So just looking for an update.
Sure. Do you want me to answer it? Well, at least what I know. So last month, their representative came to our meeting and apologized for the delay, and they said they still have every intention of resubmitting a new site plan. Resubmitting a new site plan sometime in the future, right? Anything new from there? Okay, so right now, nothing's going on with it.
Will we be notified like we were last time of when those proposals come back out? We had a 30-day notice of the next board meeting.
Everyone in that area would still get a notice, right?
Site plan review notice needs to be in the mail between 5 and 15 days before the meeting.
Okay, I just want to make sure we were notified. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else have a public comment not related to items on the agenda? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Mary Gale. I don't need all that. Hi, my name is Mary Gallagher Eustace. I live in 224 Division. And I just wanted to say that I was in Petoskey recently, and the flowers up there are lovely. But I want to comment that to the city employees and to the city who puts up these beautiful flowers, I'm very proud. I'm very proud every time I roll downtown, trip downtown, whatever. But they're beautiful, and Petoskey frankly has nothing on us and our city employees' flowers.
Thank you very much. I'm sure they never get tired of hearing that. Okay, anybody else before we move on to tonight's agenda? Seeing none. Okay, here's what we have on the agenda tonight and how we conduct the business of the Planning Commission. So we have one public hearing. It is a proposed amendment to zoning ordinance articles 2, 3, 4, 9, 11, and 12. Staff is going to give us a report. I'm going to give anyone who wishes to speak in favor or against it an opportunity to speak. Everybody will get their chance. We just ask that you, again, tell us your name and your address for the minutes. Try to avoid repetition as much as possible, and we just ask that you keep it under 5 minutes. Okay? Once everyone has had their chance to speak, I'm going to close the public portion of the hearing. And after that, we don't engage in any more back and forth with participants in the audience. It's just an opportunity for the board and staff to discuss and decide what they're going to do. The goal would be that we would make a recommendation to the city commission. Is that right? Okay, so that's what we're going to do tonight. Ms. Paula, would you get us started with a report, please?
Thank you, Chair. I will do my best to project my voice from here so that I can share the screen and everyone can follow along as much as possible with the, I know this is hard to read. This is just the staff report. I'll be saying everything that's up on the screen. If you can't read it, I promise that's okay. We get to parts where there's details are very important. I will zoom in for the benefit of the room, if that's okay with the board. I'm just going to briefly walk through the staff report to make sure there's a baseline of understanding. I know the Planning Commission has gone through the details of these proposed changes several times. So I'll hit them at a high level, and if there are questions later during fact finding, I'm happy to go back and pull up specifics and explain them in greater detail. This has been going on for a long time. I'm glad to hear that we finally got the word out. We've got a lot of people here that have heard about the proposed changes. The Planning Commission has been working on for years. These changes are fully in agreement with the city's master plan, the 2018 addendum to the master plan about housing and new opportunities and more types of housing units, as well as the findings of the housing study that the city commissioned and received in 2020, and the state's redevelopment ready communities program. Those are some of the pieces that got us here. So the Planning Commission has been working on these piece by piece, ultimately decided we can't adopt them in 6 different chunks because they are all interrelated. And I know that makes this a lot of complicated pieces working together. That's why we took a long time to go through it. And I apologize if it seems abrupt to some people. So we will do our best to explain anything that yet seems opaque. At the August 22 meeting of the Planning Commission, we walked through the changes wholesale in great detail. Some members of the public were there. And at that time, the decision was made to move forward with the public hearing process on the schedule we're currently on. Between then and now, city staff have held several public meetings trying to get the word out about these proposed changes. We prepared presentations and boards, and we walked people through them, and we answered questions, and we got good feedback from about 50 people between meetings and phone calls and people coming in to talk about it, several articles in the newspaper helping to get the word out and summarize the proposed changes. So after I walk through the changes at a high level, you'll notice a handful, I believe it's 5 additional changes that have been proposed by staff presenting to the board tonight based on the feedback that we received. In the document, they're called out in another color so we can tease them apart. The proposed changes fall into roughly 4 different categories. The first is administrative changes. These include updating the definitions section of the ordinance, putting all the definitions in one place, adding some terms that previously had not been defined, and adding a few more helpful graphics to explain and make more user-friendly what the definitions mean. Changing the way that use standards are organized in the ordinance from long lists different for each use category by each district into one table, which makes it easier to view. And amending some things in the use standards section that are no longer relevant due to other sections we'll get to. The second category are district standards. These focus on the downtown and some residential districts as well. Making changes for the downtown and the RR district. These are form-based code type standards. And for the residential ones, they are helping us to meet the RRC program, to right size some of the some of the district size requirements to the actual lots in Big Rapids. The third category is housing types, adding a few types of missing middle housing types to the ordinance to be allowed in certain areas. And the fourth category are a few proposed changes to the zoning map. We're not talking about those tonight. Those will come back at the October meeting. So we're not talking about the map tonight, just the first three categories. Based on the feedback we received presenting those categories in detail to the public, there are a few additional changes. This is on page 3 of the staff report. Down here, it was noted that one of the graphics I mentioned talked about a mezzanine, but we didn't have a definition for that, so that has been added. The use table, there was some feedback from members of the community looking at particularly rooming houses as a previously allowed use that had not been addressed or updated in any way in a while, and thinking that there were several properties in our current R2 district that would be a good fit for a rooming house as trying to help meet the housing need in a way that's currently allowed. So that has been added to the use table, as I believe it's a special land use in the R2, where that had previously only been in the R3. The third change is here, amending the purpose statement for the RP to reflect what was in the use table. This was a staff oversight. The use table was correct. The purpose statement is now updated to reflect that, quote, added desired residential development is a house up to 1 unit and maximum of 1 accessory dwelling unit. The major change is to the R1 district. I will show these, I promise, in a second. And that is to edit the desired development again to a house of 1 unit and up to maximum of 1 accessory dwelling unit. This was the piece that was the most controversial before. This is the piece we've gotten the most feedback on. There was a lot of concern about allowing 2 and 3 unit detached houses in the R1. Staff is recommending walking that back. That meets all of the recommendations of the housing study and the master plan and the RRC. There seems to be a lot of feedback from the community that I guess we were leaning too heavily on those other recommendations versus the feedback from the community. And so that has been pared back to now read house 1 unit plus 1 accessory dwelling unit. And I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about that tonight, so we welcome your comments. And the 5th one is the section 417, clarifying there's a statement that was in the ordinance about accessory structures in residential districts. These are garages and sheds and things like that. We clarified that section that those are not residential. Those aren't, you can't dwell in those, to make sure they're clearly distinct from the new accessory dwelling unit type. Again, I apologize that I am trying to do several things at once here. So in the proposed document, all of the chapters that have proposed, every page that there's a proposed change to is in the packet, is then presented. It is on the city website. It is available. And it's every proposed change with 2 exceptions is highlighted in red. The exceptions are the definition section is new wholesale. Any definition we had before that didn't get cut because it's no longer relevant, like bulk petroleum plant, is still in there. And the new ones are added, so we didn't highlight those. And then the use table is new wholesale as well. But everything else is highlighted in red. So as you go through, if you're here and you were to go through the document, again, all of the definitions, there's many pages of them, many graphics help illustrate what some of the definitions mean. These have all been carried forward, and the style, the formatting has been updated to make them easier to look through. Then the use table is new wholesale. So if you're trying to figure out where you can do a particular use in Big Rapid zoning, you go to the table, you look for the use category, say it is a bed and breakfast, go to lodging uses, find bed and breakfast in, then you can find that is allowed as a principal use in the RP and the RR. Then you know which district you're looking at, and you can go to those particular pages for more information. We go through the different sections here. These are the districts themselves. So this, anything in blue are the new staff recommended changes. The RP, again, this was just, it didn't get added in here to reflect the use table. Desired residential development includes detached houses comprised of one unit, a maximum of one accessory dwelling unit. Similarly, in the R1, you'll see the red were the changes proposed as of the previous meeting. The blue are the new staff recommendations, which amends that, striking out the 1 to 3, replacing it with just 1, and a maximum of 1 accessory dwelling unit. The maximum is the addition there. It said that it was just a clarifying word. And then as you get into the other districts, there are more proposed changes, again, to right size the district sizes to the actual lots that we have zoned this way in Big Rapids today. So there are these for all of the districts. The RR has some more form-based code types added to it, as does the C2. The downtown district, and the downtown district also has this brand new storefront form-based code style requiring traditional downtown development. If you're building any new development along the bolded areas, essentially on Michigan Avenue in our downtown district, would require it to meet that traditional downtown frame. As you get to the other sections of the ordinance, there are as well some changes in Article 4. These are general regulations that apply to building types or uses throughout any of the districts. This is where the new 4.2 section is, which adds design standards, clarifying some things, pulling some pieces from other sections together, and addressing some of the new terms that come with the form-based code style. We also, in this section, this is where you get the definitions of the new missing middle housing types. This is where it says house, detached structure, or semi-detached, incorporating 2 or 3 units. And that is where, in the specific districts, the RP and the R1, for example, that's why it's clarified there, 1 unit. So this applies unless it's superseded by the other sections. So there's that. And then townhouses is new, flats or small apartments are new. Apartment complex is a carryover from the existing ordinance. Accessory dwelling units are new, and cottage courts are new. The planning commission has walked through them in great detail before. I'm just trying to speed read through this for you. Some changes to the use standards, as I mentioned, reflecting changes previously made in the other sections, and then pulling the planned unit development section out of Article 11 because it's such a big one to stand alone. That'll make it easier to find, easier to use, and easier to amend in the future because it needs some updating. So that is a speed through of the changes. I'm happy to talk about them in more detail as the commissioners have questions at the end of the hearing. And when, if I may offer, if members of the public have specific sections they'd like to look through, I'm happy to pull a chair over here and pull them up for you when we get to that time.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you very much to you and the whole team. I know this was a tremendous amount of work, and it makes it so much easier to read. And I think it'll be a great help once it's all together. Make it easier for people to kind of access the government regulations. So, okay. I want to open up the floor if anyone wishes to speak in favor of the proposed changes. We usually give them the floor first, but I expect it might be a mixed bag. So I'm just going to open it up to whoever would like to speak. Again, we just ask for a few things. One, that you give us your name and address for the minutes, that you try to keep it brief, under 5 minutes is what the limit is. And just if you want to just agree with the points other people have made, you can do that too, so that it'll go into the minutes that you voiced your concerns. Okay. Whoever would like to kick us off? Yes, Ms. Rose.
Good evening, everyone. I want to take this time to thank the Plan Board for all the work that you do. And I'm representing today myself in R1 District, 518 Local Street. And also, but most importantly, the Graphics Housing Commission. Mark Sahaki apologizes for not being here tonight. He just found out about the proposed changes here actually yesterday. So he spent most of the day today kind of doing some investigating, and he wanted me to represent his thoughts about the proposed changes. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read this so I don't miss anything, okay? All right. Number one, it is not a bad idea to consider changes, especially outdated, antiquated language and or practices. Number two, R1 proposed changes may need further discussion and understanding. It has potential to dramatically change single-family neighborhoods. Is this what the community wants? We do need to encourage and facilitate new housing and fits within the vision of the community. Okay, in the city and the Big Rapids Housing Commission have focused on eliminating non-conforming rentals in the R1 districts, and allowing accessory dwelling units seems to change this direction. What is the value of allowing ADUs in R1 districts? How effectively can existing accessory structures be converted into living units with respect to building codes and energy codes? ADU units could create more problems by creating more density than currently exists. Should greater density be restricted to R2 and R3 districts? The need to reduce the minimum size of R1 lots may make sense in some areas of the city, but the proposed minimum lot size seems too small for some future developments. Could there possibly be an additional R1 district for newer or future neighborhoods? It has been the Housing Commission's experience in developing Brookside estates that smaller lots are undesirable for single family home buyers. That's our experience. Reducing the minimum size of homes in some districts or creating a district for smaller homes is worthy of discussion. Reducing the minimum size of homes in R1 districts doesn't seem to fit the direction of Mechanic Street and Brookside developments, and we're very concerned about that. The Housing Commission typically develops single-family homes with attached garages and basements, which don't typically fit with smaller lot sizes, especially ranch-style homes. Cottage courts will present challenges with on-site outdoor storage of items. These units will not have basements or garages and have no storage areas. We found that creating storage units for seniors and families helps reduce this problem. We also feel that we need to address how we as a city communicate with one another. I think it's a pretty serious situation when your housing commission did not know about this, 5 years of work here, okay? And we've all sat together on the Mechanic Street project. This was kind of shocking news to Mark Sahaki and all of us on the Housing Commission. Now, having said that, I am respectfully asking you folks to table any decision that you have on this so we can have a chance to have more public hearings that are filled to the brim like this one, so we can all feel like we have looked at every possible thing that we can for the good of our city and the people that live in it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, there's a sign-in sheet there. If you want, you could just put your name on the list to be next or whatever.
My name is Lonnie Durr. I live at 120 Hutchinson Street, Big Rapids. And I used to have some faith in the decisions made by city council. And that was disrupted when the decision was made on marijuana. I sometimes think that being visionary and looking further beyond the project right at hand, that the public and the commission would have been well served by looking beyond just the money involved. In any case, when you go out in this town to have dinner and you go out to have a drink, you go to a licensed establishment. The same thing is true with the marijuana establishments. You've got about 20 in town. Some of them are destined to fail. And they paid high prices for their property. The end result is you may end up with storefronts left empty. And everybody knows a storefront left empty in town doesn't look good. Along the same lines, when it came to the changes in R1, I came down here and I asked about it and was told what the political well-being of R1 was, but was not given the insight as to the fact that that would totally change. And multiple dwellings in one building. I've talked to realtors. Realtors have said the end result is they're going to devalue property. What looks good today may be fine, but look a year down the road. Please look 2 years down the road, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and take a look at what property values are going to be. And the effect is you're going to end up devaluing property. And I would be willing to place a bet with any one of you, a bet I know I would win. That bet would be that you're not going to lower my taxes. And I know I would win that bet. So I would, if you take a look at the community itself, you have places where people can rent. Your move to make the R1 basically an R2 neighborhood is playing into the hands of people that live here for 4 years, or maybe 5 years if they're from class. Other than that, there's no consideration given to people, many of which have lived here all their life, 50, 60 years. I'm just a newbie. I've only been here 30 years. But, you know, consideration to families. Government today has done what they can to devalue the family. Now, the appearance is this, that you're devaluing the homes in which we live. I think it's just one thing right after the other. I would ask you to consider tabling a vote on this for more consideration and more input from the public. Thank you for your time.
You don't need my permission. You could even line up. I mean, I appreciate it.
My name is Jane Johansson. I live at 117 South Stewart and also own 414 Maple. So I am heavily invested in this town. I've lived here my whole life. This is my town, just like I'm hearing from other people. This is our town. And I did spend 10 years on the planning commission, so I do have a little bit of knowledge of how these things work. And I'm on the ZBA. How many years? I can't remember. Someone would have to tell me how many years I've been there. I can't remember. But, so I've been involved in the city politics, etc. And my comments are related to the RP zone. back in 2008, I believe it was 2008, the year that Mark Warbaugh was elected mayor, we had on the ballot the RP zone. There was a few landlords in town that were not happy with the RP zone, so it got put on as a referendum or something, whatever they call it, whatever they put on to be voted on. By over 60%, the city of Big Rapids wanted the RP zone as written in this ordinance book. So can you actually change something that the city people voted on? I mean, our people voted on that RP zone as is. Does the board actually have the right to change something that the people voted on? I mean, I think that's very important. Because I have been trying to find out, and I've asked several times and have received no response. I am worried about, well, it's not up there, the usage table on the RP, where you could use, could be a single family dwelling, it could be a professional office building, or a combination thereof. And there is a whole list of things that can be a combination thereof. I do not see up in this proposal anywhere where it says the RP zone can be a combination of an apartment and a dentist office, like Dr. Garlick has. He has an apartment above, he rents out, and he uses the downstairs for his dental office. I myself have a Comstock house, I have apartments upstairs, and I have Edward Jones down below. Works out beautifully. And the reason we did this back then, and there's others out there that are on the same committee that created the RP, was to take these older homes that were too big to live in. I mean, who can afford to heat some of these homes? That made them more usable by having multi-use, but not multi-people, because the occupancy was still single family. You couldn't rent 4 students and an office downstairs. It's still single family usage. So I've asked and had no answer because I don't want to lose the multiple usage of having a rental home, single family rental, dentist office, financier, anything like that, real estate office, things like that. Well, Mark Gifford, he was here when I was here. You're still here.
Yes, I would.
I'm over hiding on my home. But so that, and besides the other stuff, all you other people have brought up, it's been very pertinent, but we need to keep our RP zone the way it is right now. I don't think it's not broke, because when I moved into Big Rapids back in, because I've lived here all my life. I grew up here in the house I'm living in, I grew up in. And when I moved back in 2001, I thought, oh my God, what happened? I had 2 drug houses across the street from me. And I know it for a fact because the undercover drug police officer came over through my backyard because he was smart enough not to come in the front door because he's undercover, you understand. And he told me, yes, 112 and 120, their drug houses were monitoring them. Well, they surveilled from a neighbor's house. People caught on, yeah, moved out like rats. But it was horrible. I mean, the noise, the cars, the people, it was miserable. Well, when we rezoned it, we knew it'd take a little while for the RP zone to take effect, but it had. We reclaimed it. We have families next door. We have little children, older people like me. It's turning into a really nice neighborhood, and it's moving on down the street. A little further we go, we reclaim a home every so often for different reasons. So I need to know if we get to keep our district the way it is. Let's see, is that all I got to say? Probably said no. But again, I agree with the other folks. I don't think you're ready to make a decision on this. This is a huge decision. It's a big decision. You're doing an awful lot all at once. And nobody knew about it because during the summer, what are people doing? They're vacationing, they're boating, they're fishing, they're going to class reunions, they're going to weddings, the receptions, the graduations. August comes around, what are they doing? They're getting the children ready for school, ready for college. No one's paying attention. That's why nobody knew about it till just pretty much now. So I guess I still would like an answer about I've talked to a few people about it and like to know about the local usage of in the RP zones. Because up here, when you had that chart up, you went across the RP and it said nothing about real estate, a lawyer, a dentist, finance office. None of that was in as an allowed usage. And it should be. So, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jack Fraser. I live at 522 Bailey Drive. I'm on the west side of town. You might know where we are. You've heard of Water Tower Place. I was on that board when that was formed. I can inform you that I live on a clay hill. It's at least 350 feet deep of clay. We had that experience. Actually, I have a couple of questions. One is, what started this? What is this push on median housing? Now, I have a house that I added 840 square feet to for a special needs child. So I've doubled my house. Now, the original material that was going around here in town said that we were gonna go with the multiple, which is, I understand now it's been changed. And I was trying to figure out how much I could get for that house, because I can cut it up into 3 different units already. I've done that for landlords up on Michigan Avenue. There's a couple houses up there that I cut up at their request. I was just the guy doing it, you know. Other points. One is, I used to live on Rose Avenue at 812 Rose. That was an R1 zone when I moved into it. They changed it to R2. Somebody got smart and changed it back to R1 under the old definition. Okay? And, okay, I'm getting hand signs out here. But the issue is the houses that became rentals were grandfathered in. And then as they sell, they have to go back to a single family status that exists. Now, we've talked about this additional housing on an R1 lot. There was some property down on Woodward Avenue near State Street where there was a big fire. Turned out it was a little drug house and a little house behind the house. Okay. And given the current feelings here in the community regarding drugs, a couple of my new neighbors, by the way, run these places. The thing is, it creates issues. Out on Bailey, years ago, we used to have a place called Hillcrest. I think it's still there. I remember being there in the 70s. Okay. Yeah, it was an interesting time. But then they built another project for low income housing, allegedly. And that's been issues. Now, in between there's some duplexes. Okay, these are all rentals. And I can tell you about the motorcycles running up and down the street. I can tell you about people, as I listen to the people at Water Tower Place, and they're good folks up there. They really are. The staff, I've had staff in my own home for almost 30 years, taking care of my daughter. So I understand the impact of these additional people in your homes and on your neighborhood. It's not without an effect on your neighbors. Now, my neighbors have been pretty tolerant. I keep telling them I'm the head hillbilly in the neighborhood. But why is that? Because I have boats. We talked about storage here. That's an issue in an R1 zone. I've got so many friends around the city who have my boats because my neighbors, I don't want to upset them. I don't want to get them all going. But again, we're an R1 neighborhood. People work on their homes. They've invested in this community. I've invested in this community. Now, in my past, as Mark will attest, I've done enforcement work. So the verbiage that I've heard here tonight leaves me with questions. Biggest question is right to the west of us, there's this huge chunk of ground. And we've had a number of developers come in, take a look at that ground, and they want to do this, they want to do that. And so far, they've all been turned down. I mean, you have to install sewage, you have to install water, roads, curbs, and all types of things. Where does this fit into this plan? I don't see it. And I would really like to understand how this plan applies to that. Northeast corner of town. And Mark, I think you live up there now. There's been some development up on there, Mechanic Street in that area. I don't know for certain because I don't go up there anymore. My kids used to babysit there. That was unknown. But the thing is, R1 protects the single family. That's our bottom line. R1 as is protects the bottom family. You start adding, my house is big enough now that my daughter's gone. I could bring in grandma and put her in her own apartment. That would work, okay? It's built that way. It's built for sustainability. But to bring it in, oh, there was a house on Warren that used to be a boarding house. That's one of the places I cut up into apartments. You have these issues, and I don't truthfully see them being addressed here. Because if you get into the verbiage of this and the actual application, somebody from your commission coming out, doing an inspection, what are they going to see? What is the process in your mind as to how this is going to build this city as a better city? We are a family city. I had a wild idea coming over here. Maybe we need to change the sign on the water tower. It won't apply anymore. Because our community is a community of families. We have families and neighborhoods that are in apartments. That's fine. That works out fine. I'm very happy with my water tower place neighbors. We go out and talk to them. We got a nursing home down the street. The one thing I don't like is the school buses and the DART buses using my street as a shortcut to get out to Perry and not doing 25 either. I don't have a gun. I can't verify that. I'm sorry. It's just my impression. But again, consideration of this, and I'm going to support the previous speakers in this regard. I would like to see this more fully developed, a little better explanation as to what's going on. What are we going to do with this blank land out here? Are we going to put up more apartments? Are we going to put up these mini houses with a little extra house behind it on a tiny lot? That's people. That's concentration. That's demand of city services. So I really don't know what the truthful answer is at this point. I would ask you to extend this program. If you need somebody that's good at marketing, call Mark. Just get the word out that this is what we're really looking at. I don't see it right now. I really don't. And in defense of my property, I don't want to cut it up and sell it for a huge amount of money to a bunch of drug dealers. I'm sorry. That's just my feelings. But the rest of it, thank you for your time.
My name is Roberta Klein. I live at 602 Escott Street here in Grand Rapids. I made some notes because I know you like to keep things moving. I have a couple comments and then I have been through all of this, so after that, I have some questions. So, but my one comment is that I have been a city resident for 46 years. I've been an R1 resident for 42 years. Employee of the city for 46 years, past employee, and city clerk for 34 years. So I have heard conversations by the people regarding their R1, and they have emotions and they have sincere compassion for living in R1. Some of the questions that, and I've been through all of this, I've been to one of the study sessions and I was at the city commission meeting. One of the points regarding this RRC, it appears that if we participate in it, we get some sort of money, or we get thrown into a pot of several cities who have an opportunity then to get some sort of funding from that. And knowing that we're a smaller city and there's probably a lot of cities, the outcome of the dollar amount that we receive may not be all that great. And I know that there's feelings of some residents that you're selling out the R1 residents just to get $2 more into the profit. Or is the goal of this to get more rentals? I heard at the informational meeting that there were developers that are asking questions, that they want land to develop. But in a lot of experience, it shows that the developers are geared towards rentals. So are we trying to make the change in our zoning ordinance so that we can get more rentals built? I had looked at the housing study, but it was very difficult to understand. I have to admit that. But at the city commission meeting, it was brought up about townhouses, cottages, duplexes, ADUs, and what they might look at. And just for the audience information, there are pictures at the very end of that housing study that will give you, ideas of what they look like. So that is out there for review. The one comment on the housing study, when I read through it, there were a lot of comments of where, I don't know how to say it, it was worded towards inclined to rent. A lot of the data showed of populations that were inclined to rent. And there again, my question is, are we really looking for more rentals? Is there a separate definition for the amount of occupancy in the ADUs? I couldn't really find that, and maybe there I could not find it. Under functional family has been changed from a group of no more than 4 people plus their offspring to a group of no more than 6 people plus their offspring. I'm not quite sure what that means and why that changed. Does that mean mom and dad can live there and daughter and husband can come in and son and wife can come in with all their kids? Is that a functional family? That immediately could be a lot of people. So I think we need to understand what that means. I heard at the Monday night meeting that there were no comments received from the R1 and R2 people. My feelings on that is that they are already higher density. And maybe they could just hope that this, the attention given to the zoning ordinance may bring in a developer that might tear down some of this old stuff and put up something that looks really nice. If you haven't seen it, check out the unit on Chestnut Street. It's very nice. It's a 4-unit. It's very nice. I would love to see that all along State Street. Looks very nice. The use table indicates houses are permitted in R1. The definition now reads detached ADUs are allowed. I think that's going to be a problem. Section, I think it's 11.17 reads, 1 supplemental occupant per single family dwelling in R1, and the owner shall occupy the dwelling that occupy the residence. Is that going to stay the same? So that the occupant has to live in the R1 unit. Regarding the ADUs, it states the occupancy and use standards for the ADU shall be the same as those applicable to the primary dwellings. So does that mean that no more than 6 people plus offsprings would be allowed in there? I mean, that would be, if you have that many people in both dwellings, that's quite a large number of people. And does this take into consideration that the owner would at least live in the primary house, or could both of units be rentals? Could the primary house be a rental and the ADU be a rental? And parking, it calls for 1 additional parking place is required for the ADU. So if there's more drivers than that in the ADU, then more parking, I would think, would have to be required. So I'd like to know if that is correct. The other thing is we've seen mobile homes being placed throughout the house. Throughout the city. Some of these houses fit in nicely with the surrounding houses, some of them do not. And my concern would be is, can an ADU being proposed in R1 be a mobile home? So if somebody comes in and gets a lot in R1, can they put a mobile home? And then could the developer put another mobile home behind that? Or could they put in a mobile home and then build a smaller house behind that? It's just that some of these units are not pleasing from the street. And if you go along Bronson, you have 2 units where the side faces the street, not the front of the house. It's not fit in nice with the neighborhood. So I would like to say thank you so much, particularly to staff and your hard work. I know this is not easy. I've read through all of it. I've tried to fit it into the existing ordinance, so I know you all put a lot of work into it, and I appreciate the staff having the informational meetings. But I too feel that it needs a little bit more attention. It needs to be reviewed a little bit more, and I would ask also that you table it this evening. I'll work on it, look it over, answer some of the questions that I and many of the people will have, and have another public hearing and get the information out sooner and better so that we all know what's being considered. So thank you for your time.
Ordinarily, I don't speak this kind of thing, but I guess I have to. Now, I'm a newcomer to Big Rapids, okay? I've only been here 6 years. Oh, my name is Joan Chirmaturo, 917 Lilac Avenue. And I've only been here for 6 years, and I moved from the east side of the state, and I came into my neighborhood, and I said, this is where I want to live. I came from a farm, I sold the farm, came here, bought a darling little house on Lilac Avenue. And it's just perfect for an old lady, just perfect. And the neighborhood is fantastic. We have young families and we have older people and in between. And it is just perfect. I stood there on the day I made an offer on the house, and the quiet, it was just quiet. And it was just lovely. And it was just perfect. And I bought the house that day. I walked through it and bought the house and have not regretted 1 minute of living in that house, in my neighborhood, or in Big Rapids. I like this town. I want to stay here. And I want my neighborhood to stay R1 exactly the way it is. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tim Vogel. I live at 618 Willow Avenue. I want to thank you for withdrawing the 3 units from the R1. I appreciate that. What I am still concerned about is the auxiliary. The small unit that can be at the R1 lots that, as I understand it, can be used as can be placed as a small house. You lived in it, and if I don't understand that, tell me. Because I think that, as others have stated, is just increasing the density, which will lessen our use of our beautiful R1 neighborhood. I wondered in the development of the redevelopment ready communities, I wondered, maybe I'm missing something, maybe I could look at other communities and see if there was something about R1s that maybe I could glean off it. So I did a little work, and I chose 3 communities that are currently designated and have completed the replacement ready communities designation. Mount Pleasant is one that was used in the housing study quite often. I wanted to know about the single family units, and as it states in their ordinances, Mount Pleasant states is they have a single family unit and they do allow duplexes. I went to Houghton, Michigan. Why? It's very similar in population and the number of units of students. They have single family units, simply as we do now. I looked at Marquette again. Marquette's a little bigger community, but the student population is about the same as ours. They have a term called low density residential, which is a single family unit. So for the redevelopment, I guess I gleaned off that we can have a single family development without having additional units in our backyards, little houses that I think could look unsightly and cause problems that have been stated in the past for me. I also wanted to was concerned about the folks that have had problems renting, and the issue over the years has been we need places for folks to be able to rent, young professionals, families. And so in my own situation, when I came in 1973, I rented two apartments on South Michigan Avenue. And then left for 5 years, came back with a family and a dog. And we were able to rent again an apartment, and we were there for about a year. The population of Big Rapids at that time was 11,900. The student population was approximately 8,800 students. And it really was consistent between the 70 census and the 1980 census. Today, the population of Big Rapids is 7,153. The student population in Big Rapids is 7,800. So I said, well, what's changed? Well, time has changed. The units that I rented before, I'm not sure much has been done with them in 50 years. That's a concern. But I think the population has about stayed the same. I mean, I think the current population, because of COVID, created some miscues on those numbers. But all in all, I think that they're about the same. So I'm not sure what the problem is. Maybe I'm 50 years old, and I'm not looking in that particular vein. I have a couple suggestions, at least one suggestion. We have a developer that has taken old multifamily housing, dilapidated structures, and turned them into apartments that are 1 room, 2 rooms, and done a marvelous job of doing that. It seems that might be an opportunity for the city to look at assisting with grant money or something to help turn those old buildings into something that would be attractive to the young professionals that come in the community. Other than that, I know this has been a lot of work. I served 9 years on the plan commission. I had some and did work on the redevelopment committee on the when it started. It's a lot of work. I appreciate staff. I appreciate the time that you put in, and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen and ladies of Big Rapids. My name is Zach Cooper. This is my father, Tim Cooper. We run Red Bull Rentals. I also work underneath him at Universal Rent to Own. Long story short, we're here today because we'd like to acquire a property on 430 North 3rd Street. It goes across from Madison. It is a church, and I've heard a lot of, obviously, towards R1 zone, adjacent is against it, but this is an R2. We're looking to provide opportunity for individuals to come into this area. We were probably going to renovate it to have 4 to 6 rooms throughout the homestead. We have lots of opportunity in our past. We were actually here back in 2016. We were recognized by the good neighbors of Big Rapids for helping improve the quality of life on 623 Rose Avenue. We've made a lot of progress since then. We've acquired 406 Green Street. If any of you have seen the house that used to have a red roof, metal roof, a white house, turned into something very beautiful, built a back deck, ended up selling it this summer, which is a very progressive thing we did for our business. I take a lot of pride in doing these properties, turning them from dilapidated to something beautiful. I'm not looking to bring in degenerates or people to downplay the quality of life in Big Rapids. So I'm gonna let my father speak. Tim, go ahead.
We didn't, excuse me, we didn't buy this church yet. We looked at it, we thought, hey, let's buy this church. We did the same thing with Paris Motel, Blue Lake Motel, lots of other properties setting there. So we thought, hey, we'll turn this into 6 or 8 rooms. When we make something, we make it really nice. With our Red Bull Rentals, we don't rent to the students. We rent to the teachers. That's what we do. We also have lots of Airbnbs on the river. That's a whole different subject, but we do that. I'm also in partnership with I partner with Universal Rent It All, Universal Rent to Own, and there's other businesses. But what we want to do, there's a niche because of the Paris Motel. You have the motel and you have a house. In the house, we made it a group home for older single men. We think, hey, no one's going to rent there. Endless calls every day. Each one has a room, a bed, a refrigerator, TV on the wall. There's 5 guys that live there. There's a group kitchen. There's a group living room, laundromat. That thing is always full. Every one of those rooms is full. So when we see that church, we can turn that into a beautiful, I'm going to call it a boarding house. I don't know what you want to call it. 6 to 8 rooms. We literally can fill that up in a month once we turn it into what it needs to be. When we do something like that, there's no long-term lease. You pay like $500 a month. People can stay there for years, and people can stay there for months. The reason we're here is the city looks at it and says, hey, we don't like that. Hey, nothing lost. We didn't buy it. We put a bid on it, but the city doesn't like it. We're just going to walk and do something else. If you guys think, hey, that's a decent idea, tell me more about it, we're happy to do that. So we're right in the middle of, do we buy it or not? The thing's just been sitting there for, who knows, 3-4 months empty. We'll definitely turn it into something nice. When we were talking with her earlier, she said, hey, come in and bring up that subject. So here we are to bring up the subject. I don't know if it has anything to do with what you guys are concerned about with the R1 and R2. But that's what we want to do. Again, most of all of our properties are R1, Rose Avenue, Marion Avenue, Green Street, all over town. But this is something different we want to try. So that's what we're tossing out.
Thank you for your guys' time.
Anyone else about the public hearing?
I got a comment.
Jana Barriers, 729 North State. I just would like to say that in the R1 districts, we have worked hard to renovate our homes, make them look nice with the property that we have. I feel that if you're going to start adding one unit, an extra unit, you're gonna see a lot of people leave the R1 district and move outside the city. We are there because we like the peace and quiet. We're trying to, as homes sell, get families in there. I just know that if I had somebody right on my back, I would consider selling and moving out to the township or out into the county. And there's just one less person there. I mean, I would think that as a city, you want some nice neighborhoods that are all R1. And I just see this going in the wrong way if you allow an extra home on the property. That's all. Thank you.
Wayne O'Neill, I live at 903 Woodward Avenue, just beyond Bailey. Someone here about a week ago was nice enough to come along and put a slip of paper in my door, or I'd have never known about this. And I think if the people in Big Rapids, the majority of them knew this room wouldn't be anywhere big enough to hold the people that would be concerned. I think you need to do a lot more advertising out in the city to let all the residents know what's going on here, because I think you more than pack this room. I'm against any change to R1. I'd like to see it stay as it is. Thank you.
Crystal Weibel again, 830 Marion Avenue. I didn't really come here to have a comment regarding zoning, but listening to my fellow residents, I feel like I need to say something. So, the issue in Big Rapids, I don't think is necessarily changing R1 to accommodate more affordable housing, because we know that in Big Rapids, we lack affordable housing. We lack housing in general for people who can't get a mortgage. Adding an additional dwelling to a R1 zone does not resolve that issue. I think we need to look outside of R1 zoning and create a community that allows single family living housing that is affordable and not jack up the rent because it's a brand new housing development. And adding an additional house, like for me, where I live, I'm considered a double lot because I'm part of in the northern part of the city, so it's a little bit larger. Very easy to add a second dwelling to my property. What does that do to the city taxes? I know if you have two residents, you have a higher tax bracket because you're taxed higher because you have a secondary resident. What does that do to our property taxes? So just other things that can come about if this gets approved. Also, who's to say if I were to sell my house after I put an additional housing in, that a developer isn't going to come in and rent out both properties now. So no longer is there a resident in the main housing. So it's just looking at the gray areas of these proposals, because we have to protect the neighborhoods that we have and still accommodate the families that are wanting to move here but can't because there's zero housing available. That's all.
My name is Roberta Nista. I live at 611 Willow, and we've been there 47 years. It's our only house ever. And we picked it because of that neighborhood. It's a wonderful neighborhood, as the young lady explained. It's very quiet. It's safe. It's like a big family. When people move in, we welcome them. The pandemic wasn't as bad because we had each other there and we take care of each other. And I guess what I'm going to say, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. The neighborhood's wonderful. Why would you want to mess it up? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dan Spadowski. I live at 830 Lilac Avenue, down in one of the nice areas of Big Rapids. I have to agree with all my fellow Big Rapids people. I've lived here 67 of my 69 years. I busted my hind end to get what I've got. I purchased my home 20 years ago. I got it for my wife and my kids, and now my beautiful 8 grandchildren. I'm just asking you, why would you want to wreck my neighborhood? Like these folks said, they live down there. Our biggest thing is when the Ferris kids or the kids come running by, the trap kids, and we get to wave at them. That's our loudest noise. That's the reason we moved there. We moved there to give ourselves a home to live the rest of our life in. Okay? If you've never seen my home, it's right on the corner of Cypress and Lilac, come on down. I try to keep it very, very nice, clean, and welcoming, but not to everybody. Okay? I just want to say, I don't think commissioners are listening to the people. And I will agree, I learned about this 2 weeks ago. I asked one day, oh, so you've been doing this for 5 years? Why haven't we been asked or talked to or seen or notified? I also asked because I was told there was a study done to the cities. I asked what cities? I couldn't get an answer. Oh, well, I watch Captain Kangaroo too, but whatever. Here's the deal. I agree with these folks. Leave us alone. We've gone through the pandemic. They say they've been working on this for 5 years. 3.5 years been pandemic. We haven't been able to talk to each other. Seriously. And who's going to benefit from this? Real estate? Landlords? Not me. You're going to down my place after I bust my ass for that many years, and you're going to turn it into a hellhole. I asked, and I sit on this board, and I turned down a lot of stuff that could have wrecked some stuff in this city. But I thought of the people first. It's not about me. It's about these people who pay taxes. I pay over $4,000 a year for taxes. Okay? Not that I want to, but I agree. If everybody starts moving in, and we got little Detroit down there, do my taxes go down? But if this continues and stuff like this has to happen, sadly, my wife and I, we've talked about, we'll move out of the city because we're not welcome here no more. After 67 years, I'm not welcome here. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Paula, would you mind sharing with us the other comments that we've received, written or telephonic?
Yes, so in addition to everyone who came tonight, the word was out about the meeting and we have received a number of comments from people who could not attend and asked me to share their remarks on their behalf. The commissioners have copies. I will summarize for the room. A few of these people may be here. I don't know all of them, so I hope I summarized great. Okay, Judy and Dale Monson, 908 Lilac Avenue, against the proposed changes for the following reasons. They don't want what they call apartments in the R1, thinking about the duplexes and triplexes that were in the original proposal, believing that will turn off potential buyers to Big Rapids. Duplexes and triplexes, they believe, will immediately turn into student housing and therefore ruin family neighborhoods. They are supportive of Ferris, but don't want students in the R1 neighborhood. I believe, sorry. don't want don't want apartments in the R1 neighborhood, many of which are students. Moving on to Catherine La Pietra. I don't have an address on this one. There are some questions about the proposals, but then believe there's a need for more affordable rental housing. I don't believe that changing the zoning will help that. Want to see the R1 stay for families and older residents, and thinks that single-family zones are necessary and should not be changed. Monty and Catherine Johnson, 526 Bailey. Lived in our house over 40 years, bought it because it's an R1 neighborhood, like the quality of that neighborhood. They want the R1 neighborhoods to stay single family with low traffic and low noise. Understand the city is trying to accommodate and encourage more housing. Don't want to see changes to single family neighborhoods. Greg and Terry Denny, 323 West Pier Marquette. We totally disagree with the rezoning of an entire district R1 to allow any kind of accessory unit, dwelling unit, small home, mother-in-law cottage, etc. There's a long email from Mark Warba, 627 Woodward. Agree the city has need for quality affordable housing. Please consider other options. The R1 is the bedrock of the city. There's some proposed ways to reconsider it. Make changes to the R2 and R3 first. Make a new district that's an in-between the R1 and the R2. Recognizes that may constitute spot zoning, still wants that to go forward. And has questions about rentals in the R1. There is a comment from someone named David Mason who lives in Reed City, but sent a letter asking some questions and basically saying there's places for multifamily and places that it shouldn't belong. I apologize. I had some confusion reading that letter, so please read it yourselves. Jane sent an email. I won't repeat it. She already made her comments very clear. And there were two comments that were had. One was an in-person conversation with Tyler Haynes, local realtor, Big Rapids Township resident. Thinks that new developments and new construction will be safer. They must conform to all current building and fire codes. There sees a need in Big Rapids for more units, both for renters and buyers, and is supportive of the new housing types being proposed. The phone conversation with Sally and Dave Alban from 506 Bailey. Do not want their street to be anything other than single family dwellings, do not want to see ADUs, are concerned about safety, and they want to see Big Rapids be more family friendly. That is a summary of the comments received.
Okay, thank you so much. At this time, I will close the public portion of the hearing and allow the commissioners to move into fact finding. So, first off, I think I should probably just say something just to allow maybe a little bit of insight into the process. The entire time I've been on this committee, I'm pretty sure we've been working towards becoming a redevelopment ready community. It's a goal that was put before us, and it has nothing to do with, we've not been talking about changing the R1 zone for 5 years. We haven't been discussing that. No one on this committee suggested that we change it. We are looking at an entire program. Nobody was up in arms when we were talking about bike parking, for instance, or places to put bicycles. It's been a whole thing that we've been working through one step at a time. This is the next piece. And thank you all for showing up and being such a strong advocates for yourselves. I find myself in agreement with a lot of what was said tonight. I think some of it was coming maybe from a misdirected place. You know what I mean? And so let's work through it. We'll make sure that we don't ruin anyone's neighborhoods or your homes. We're certainly not going to put a home in your backyard. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna build extra properties. All right. And also, just so you know, yeah, just so everyone is clear, do your best to, as we're speaking, to not interrupt or pitch in. I know it can be hard, but anyway, where do you guys want to start? Were there any specific questions that you wanted to address that we do have answers for?
I know there was a question about the live work unit. And that was something I wasn't clear, because I think in the packet, it says that it has to be like the owner occupied apartment and then they own the business too. Is that correct? Or am I misreading that?
The
Like-
new type live work unit, yes. The question was about the RP district. I'm trying
Right.
to sit in an angle so my voice projects enough, but I still have access to all of my reference materials. So let me know if I'm not speaking loudly enough. The current RP district allows, quote, one single family dwelling per lot or one professional office building per lot. And so in the existing RP, where you have a mixed use building, it is a non-conforming use.
Okay.
That carries over to the current ordinance where if you go down the list of uses in the RP, it does include, as the question was, things outside of residential uses, including the office, professional, and business establishments use. And so that is a lot of what's there now that carried over from the current ordinance to the new format of the use table. All of those are the same, it just in the new format. The only way to do the mixed use with the kind of office or storefront, et cetera, and residential above it is if it is owner occupied.
Okay, so that's how it was before, and
Oh.
it's just,
Well, actually, I don't know if owner occupied is not right. It has to be, the person running the business has to be the one who lives in the unit. I believe
Okay.
it could be rented, but it has to be the one person doing both.
okay. Because I think that's not how it's necessarily being used now. Is that what you're saying? Because I mean, there are businesses that have like an apartment up.
There are several of them,
Mhm.
particularly concentrated in the current RP district. Those are all non-conforming
Okay.
because the ordinance as written now does not allow that as a use. Those are all non-conforming.
Okay, thank you.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but most of what we were trying to do here with correcting some of these definitions and change was just to have our definitions conform to best practices found in other
Correct.
communities, right? So that was the, that's what we're working towards is just a clearer, more easy to read and understand ordinance. Okay, what else?
What is the tax change if you have a second? What is the tax? What would the tax be if you had built a cottage for grandma?
If a property is owner occupied, the portion that is owner occupied is eligible, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, eligible for the primary residence exemption of, I believe it's 18 mills in Big Rapids. The portion of the property that is not owner occupied is not eligible for the primary residence exemption. So if 1/4 of the lot was rented, you would get the exemption or 3/4 of the taxable value of the property. I believe that is correct to the best of my knowledge.
Thank you.
How many, I had written down, jotted a few questions down. How many would be allowed in the ADUs? Is there a limit on that in the ordinance? Someone had asked how many people are allowed in the accessory dwelling units. Is it still a functional family?
There are requirements for it meeting like the standards of the district. There are requirements for size of bedrooms, et cetera. Families are a little complicated in that regard. The parking issue is very clear. There has to be parking for the number of bedrooms according to the ordinance. ADUs, it's one per space, but an ADU, according to the proposal, is, I have them out of order here, I'm sorry. It is 600 square feet or smaller. So that's not a huge space to put multiple bedrooms and multiple people in. A couple could live in a small unit and that would be allowed.
Got it. So it's limited by other areas of the ordinance.
Yes.
You would have to meet the rental allowance of the districts that you're in.
Okay. Did you catch that question about the functional family, and was that an error? Can we clarify
Yes,
that?
that was brought up to me before. I have the note from Monday about that. That was I did a bunch of research into what they were as I was going through the definitions, and the best practice definition of functional family is 6 to 8. I chose 6. I think that was one of the there were a few other definitions like that.
Well, I think the question was in the phrase, a group of no more than 6 people plus their offspring.
Having a relationship which is functionally equivalent to a family.
Mhm. And I think she was asking, what is it? Is that 6 adults and? all
6
their-
adults, if it was
all their
parents and their adult kids and their spouses and their kids, that's a family. They could live in any unit, anywhere right now legally. Functional family is a different term that encompasses people that have a long-term family type relationship, but may not be legally or blood bound together. There's a lot of case law about this that gets fairly complicated and messy, but yeah, it's a long-term established family that is not necessarily legally connected. They would meet the definition of, they could meet the definition of functional family and live together.
There are several things excluded in that definition as well.
And what about manufactured homes as accessory dwelling units?
No.
And how come?
We can't hear you back here, Chris. What was
Can't
your
hear anything.
question?
So I was repeating, one of the questions we had was, what about manufactured homes in the R1? And what about manufactured homes as accessory dwelling units? Could someone plonk a manufactured home down in their backyard and call it an ADU?
Thank you.
Paula says no.
The broader question about manufactured modular housing writ large was brought up at the August meeting. The commissioners may recall, and was set aside to be brought back with a bigger magnifying glass at a future meeting later this year. It was too big to add on to the already many things happening. So that will be coming back. There's a section in Article 4, which focuses on essentially manufactured homes and how they must fit in with the neighborhood. And it is 4252 if you're looking for the reference, and it's 2 pages of documentation there, require regulations. Those will come back for greater review. The standards in section, I apologize, the numbering has not been finalized because this is all moving. 425310 is the new regulations for accessory dwelling units. If you look through there are standards where they have to fit the character of the neighborhood. They must have similar, there's size requirements, parking, exterior finished materials, roof pitch, windows, eaves, other references here that I've never seen a manufactured home meet. I don't know how it could. There's no stipulation that expressly says cannot be a manufactured home. Something like that could be added if that was a concern.
But a typical manufactured home like we're picturing just wouldn't fit.
Like a single wide or a double wide, no,
Right.
would not meet the regulations that are in the ordinance here. Many times, there are lots of ways to do an accessory dwelling unit. There are some that you can buy in a modular home style, that you prepare the site and it comes in probably 2 or 3 pieces and it is assembled on site and put together. Those theoretically could easily meet this, but that's different than I believe the question about a manufactured home would
Right,
be.
or mobile home. Right, okay.
No, but if we were to put something in there that specifically said no manufactured home, that's where we get into some of the issues with discrimination issues, is that what? Or am I forgetting something, or was that something else?
Remember that.
We talked about that, and that's also gonna be brought up in a future meeting.
Sorry, I didn't
that-
mean to
that
bring it
will
like
come
up
back,
another
yeah.
thing, but
I don't believe it would be a major
It
issue
wouldn't be
here
that.
on the ADU side. Wholesale, it will be part of that broader
Okay.
conversation for a future meeting.
Yeah, I mean, the main difference is usually in the construction, you know, and in the frame. And I think probably, you know, with our code having a wood frame or something, not allowing steel frames, I don't know. But we can talk about it. That's the other thing about these conversations, you know, for redevelopment ready community. We only get to work on them in between all the actual work the committee has to do. So it's been sort of chipping away. So anyway, okay, well, that sort of answered the manufactured thing for now anyway.
I'm kind of was taking notes from everybody, and I think all but maybe like one speaker had said that they didn't want, I mean, there were a lot of things said, but the common thing I heard was about the accessory dwelling unit. That seems to be the biggest point of contention.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm a little bit surprised, just because
Chris, there was a comment, if you could speak up, please.
yeah, okay, we'll try.
sorry.
I
said, what I had said was that one of the, I think the most common thing mentioned was that we didn't want to add an accessory dwelling unit to the R1.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I'm very surprised too, because I didn't think it would be as big of an issue. I don't know that there are that many lots in the city where that is, where that's happening or where it could happen. I know of a couple, I've got one. But it seems obviously the most pushback is just about the R1 neighborhood. Let's talk about the other definition changes that are being proposed. Let's leave out the R1 thing for right now. What else are we talking about here that we can all kind of agree on? And we'll come back to the R1 topic.
Are you asking me?
Yes, yeah, like, because we've got,
Everything else outside of the question of how many units would be allowed in the R1, I've received some, clarifying questions about. And the only one comment that was outside of that was asking for greater feedback was the comment from Jane Johansson about the RP and the same thing.
Right.
The ADUs in that district. Everything else has received no concern, no question saying, don't do that in my neighborhood, no.
I'm curious, I know that, as a homeowner and as a homeowner myself, I have a stake in everything as well, but I know that a large part of our community are renters, and they're not necessarily short-term renters. I mean, it's easy to generalize and say they're students, but there are young professionals, families that come in that aren't able to buy a house because maybe there aren't any available. So I guess I'd be curious. I mean, I'd be curious to hear their thoughts on it. I don't know that that anybody here we want to represent that entire group, but I mean, because they're residents of the city, and I think that they should talk about our housing issues for sure.
Oh, if you wanted a public comment, I can address part of that.
Are you a renter?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'm not in public
No, I
comment, so
don't
I'm out
have-
of order.
No,
So
I
that would
don't
be
have
out
a
of order.
specific
But if you
question. I'm
wanted-
just saying, like,
Yeah,
moving
if the next
forward,
time you have
yeah.
a meeting, I'm sure I can enlighten
Thank
you
you.
about how you rent in this town.
well, and I mean, I'm a former renter, and I understand that. And I think, we can get down to, negotiating some of this, but I am from here. I've lived here forever as well. And I want to see our town grow. So, I mean, I want to do what we can to make it work, but I don't want to do that at the expense of, you know, everybody else. So, I guess that's just my statement on that. What are we doing for the future of our town too?
Yeah, I think we're in a really strange point. You know, I mean, I'm not really, it feels like I'm giving a speech. I'm just talking, but I'm saying it loud, so it feels like a speech. I've seen a real shift lately in the housing around Big Rapids. It used to be that the parents of Ferris students accounted for a good portion of my business every year. I would help many parents buy homes in all neighborhoods because they knew that would be a good investment while their kids were going to school here. I don't think I sold a single one to a Ferris parent this year. And I checked, last year it was very low as well. Things have changed where, I don't know if you've noticed, but there are hundreds of units that have been built for them to rent. And they're no longer wanting to rent our crummy single family homes that are
Crummy?
that are trash.
Crummy single family homes?
They don't want to rent the crummy single family homes that we've been offering them for rent at high prices.
Yeah.
All right, this
Really?
is the comments that I hear. So, and the homes that I've been in, you know, which is a lot of them that have been offered as rentals to students, are not nice homes. Okay, I'm glad to
Not
start.
everyone.
That's right. I'm glad that I'm seeing now, it's been changed, it's been turning over completely, where now it's more single families again, buying the homes and are putting the work in, are remodeling them. I'm hoping to see more of that. And in our discussions, what we were attempting in all of this was to allow for some more creativity in the future when someone does want to build something here, that they'd be allowed to build something useful. And our ordinances are kind of so restrictive that it made it very tough for anyone to build even if they had the room on a nice lot, for them to build something that maybe you and your family wouldn't want to live in, but maybe an older person who no longer wants to the upkeep or something like that, and yet still wants to be not in a student rental type area. They want to be around single families and families because that's what they are. So that was, the goal was just to create a little bit of flexibility for the future, not to destroy anything, not to change anything that exists as it is today, because I don't see anybody rushing out to go and spend that money and do that stuff. We're just trying to pave the way for some flexibility in the future. That's all. But I think we've heard enough to understand that when we're talking about the zoning, especially around the R1, that we're going to want to be very, very, very deliberate. We're going to want to be very slow, and we're going to want to get all the input that we can, because it's clear that it's not something to be trifled with. Agreed?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Okay. So Paula, would you give me a quick rundown of the rest of, because we were considering changes to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 articles.
Absolutely. I can give you the.
Give us a quick rundown of what they are so that we can separate them in our mind from the one proposed change to R1 to the rest of the stuff that we were.
Absolutely. I will focus in on all of the things outside of the R1 conversation here. And I'll try to let you follow along. So the definition section.
Right, the entire definition section.
And again, most of those are the same. A few of them have been updated. I'm trying to think of examples. Some things were reorganized. They've been alphabetized again because they were poorly alphabetized before because things kept being added. There were definitions in other articles of the ordinance. So in Article 4 in particular, there were a bunch of definitions. Those have all been pulled together. So there's one section. If you're looking for a definition, they're all here. I didn't think any of them were controversial. There was the question about the functional family that came up. So that could if the commission wanted to be changed. Again, things like when there's a definition like a basement, there are now some graphics to help you determine how deep it has to be considered a basement versus a slightly, below ground first story. There's a bunch of as many graphics as we could find to help clarify some of those points. I don't know that there's much in here. Can you think of anything, Emily, that, some new, updating some of the graphics, terms that were used in the ordinance that had come up a few times that weren't well explained are now given new definitions? When working on this, staff would usually look at 4 or 5 other ordinances, see the best definitions they have, see if we had anything and kind of best fit to the ordinance based on best practice. We worked very closely on this with Kathleen Duffy of Smith Group, our expert planning consultant, and she provided all of the references for best ordinance examples. If there's, again, the mezzanine is the new one. You didn't see that before. Mezzanine is an intermediate floor in any story occupying not to exceed 1/3 of the floor of such story. You don't usually see them in homes, but that is in one of the graphics, I believe, for story here. And now there is a definition of that. That was a staff oversight. Things like yards were in the used but not well defined. I think some of those are new. The definitions, were there any questions about specific ones that I could answer, or did that seem like something that there's general agreement to move forward? Okay.
Chris,
Paula,
Hang
excuse me, could
hang
you
on.
go through the accessory sheds and that one, what are your definitions as an example?
I couldn't hear. I'm sorry. Are you asking if she'll give the definition of accessory
Yes,
dwelling
she's asking
units?
for people to ask questions about, certain areas that are confusing, and I think that's one of the confusing areas. So I'm asking her, and she wants to explain it, I'm asking her to explain that one, because it's new.
I was asking the commissioners, I apologize, we're not in.
Yeah,
So it's your call.
she wasn't asking for open questions.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to talk about the definition of?
From the definition section or from the ordinance where we get into, as I mentioned, clarifying. That's
Definition?
And I have it right here.
Wait, you want-
Here's the definition as it's stated here. It says an accessory dwelling unit are smaller secondary homes on the same lot as a primary dwelling. ADUs are independent, habitable, and provide basic requirements of shelter, cooking, water, and sanitary services. ADUs may be detached, such as garden, cottage, or connected to a detached garage, or attached to the primary dwelling, such as an accessory suite or a mother-in-law suite over an attached garage, or a basement apartment, or converted living space. That's the definition.
And that's a brand new definition, right?
Is that new, or was that part of the old ordinance?
accessory dwelling units are not currently permitted. We did not have a definition for them. There was a statement in Article 4 where you could not live in any accessory building. Some current, like, buildings, like a subdivided house, for example, if it's one large and one small, might meet the definition of an ADU, but there was no definition. This is a best case, best use, best practice definition from the profession of
Yeah.
planning and zoning writ large.
You're
I don't
not
have it.
changing the definition of that, is what.
No.
Right, we're
trying to
just
say.
adding it because we're adding, or we're thinking of adding the possibility of accessory dwelling units, so we need a definition.
Should I move on from definitions?
Yes.
Or- Okay. Then we get into Article 3. This is district regulations. Here is where in the current ordinance, which I actually pulled up as a reference for people. Apologies for scanning so fast. So here, if you're looking at the RP district, for example, it starts down here in section 3.3. There is a purpose statement. There's a list of principal uses and structures, a list of accessory uses and structures, some regulations about height, area, etc., and then special land uses. It goes through those categories for every different district, long lists of uses allowed. The proposal is to replace those long lists of principal and special land uses with the table. This table, we took everything from before, put it in, and then there were some additions and tweaks and changes based on the changes to the ordinance for the downtown, things that were amended. previously adding in some uses and then kind of taking some of those long lists and shrinking them down into one thing. There used to be a list of all, you know.
I found this on the web.
Sorry, I watched, there's a list of retail type uses and it lists them all out. If you want to go to retail uses here, general retail, clothing store, gift shop, book and stationery store, leather store, art gallery, jewelry store, etc. Now there is a summary category for retail. It is retail sales and services. That pairs with a summary definition in the definition section of retail sales and services. So we're condensing that to make it easier to find things. You can look at the table by use, could alternatively look at it by district. I have a property in the C1, how could it be used? You go to the C1 and scroll down and see what types of uses are allowed in that district. Were there specific questions, things about the use table that I can clarify for the commission?
So this point is more the use of the table, not necessarily the proposed, like the R1 ADUs, and it's just, we will now use a table instead of.
Yes, but the table is the ordinance.
Okay.
Like the map, zoning map is part of the ordinance, so here is where you would find what uses are allowed. We're replacing that long list with this, so currently ADUs are one of the use lines. And to know where they're allowed, what districts allow them, you go across. Currently, R1, R2, R3, RP, RR. Those are the 5 districts where it's proposed to allow ADUs if this were adopted. If the commission wanted to take ADUs out of the RP, for example, the way you would do that is you would amend this section, this table, to remove that.
Okay.
From that square of the table.
I like the table. I think it's much more user friendly, but yes, I think we need to
Still address.
some of the issues
content
within
of the
it.
table.
But I think the just aesthetically and user friendly.
Yeah, it's gonna
much
make
better.
things so much easier for citizens, you know,
Yes.
for all of us, so.
Okay, moving on from the table. The next section are the regulations for different districts. So each zoning district you would see across the top of the table has a page in the next section. These are the remnants of what I showed in the existing ordinance. We took the list of uses and put them in the table. Everything else fits on one page for almost every district. And it is the purpose statement, the siting and building requirements, dwelling unit occupancy, and then the commercial uses have, that's organized a little bit differently, but it's the same information. And so this this is blue, for example, in the RP here, because it was on the use table, but it was not clear enough for all of the members of the public who were trying to understand. So it was also added to the purpose statement here, accessory dwelling units, and that was also where you add the house definition. Writ large is still defined as up to 3 units standalone, and then by district, you can categorize that down to say in the RP, desired residential development, detached house comprised of 1 unit. That's where you have that regulation of it's only one. It's not as it was previously in the R1. Detached houses comprised of 1 to 3 units and a maximum of 1 accessory dwelling unit. That's where you clarify for this district, house 1 unit. Whereas in the R2, house means 1, 2, or 3. Because it doesn't have that modifier.
So that section 4 is the clarifying all the things that we're.
Yes, the purpose statement is one of the places, the best place to clarify those elements. And then there are some changes. This one was brought up, I believe, in the first public comment tonight about sizing down some of the districts to fit in the ordinance today. These in the R1, for example, they are much larger. It's 11,250 square feet. That is through most of the lots in Big Rapids, a double lot. It is not an originally platted lot. So to build, when the regulations say it has to be this big to build in the R1, again, I apologize for scrolling so much. you go to Article 4, general provisions, and you find lots of exceptions so that you can still build on the lots because the zoning doesn't match the lots we have. So then you find a bunch of exceptions here, exception to area limits, exception to height limits, exceptions to front yards, exceptions to side yards, exceptions to rear yards, so that you can make it to build on the lots that we actually have. So the vast majority are currently non-conforming, and we're addressing those non-conformities, making the lots buildable by changing that number back down to fit the lots that Big Rapids have.
Right, without the need for
Yes.
special land uses and stuff like that.
Correct.
So a lot of those changes in the use tables, just to clarify, were not to require anyone to do less or more than they were already doing. It's just
It is.
to make it more appropriate to the actual lots that we have in the city.
Makes the regulations that we have clear, understandable, and as simple as required to, has enough information, but is usable. Under the current ordinance, Emily and I do a lot of explaining and helping people figure out where they can and cannot build on their property, because people look at it and say, I can't do anything. And then we have to explain to them, go through, find all of the exemptions that apply. Sometimes some do and some don't. This solves that problem by right sizing back to what the lots in Big Rapids are today.
So that's section 4. Section 9, I think, was the next one that had
Yeah,
changes.
so there were these sections for all of the different uses, the RP, the RR, and the C2 have a lot of changes. These are form-based code style for the downtown, adds the storefront requirements so that the first floor is a little taller, it has more fenestration, et cetera, storefront or office use, and then residential can be above it. You can't have a dwelling unit on the first floor in the storefront. And again, no comments on that. We held a public forum to discuss this stuff back in 2019, because we've been trying to get feedback on all these for some of it for quite a while. Article 4, getting rid of a lot of those exceptions, clarifying some things, adding, as I said, the design requirements, and then there are the building types. And so there are regulations, a description of each building type, and then some regulations about where it fits on the lot, parking, access, garages, etc., to try to get not cookie cutter, but a degree of uniformity to the buildings. Different ones have different types. It requires some difference, some variety. And then we get, after all of those sections, Article 9 was just this clarification here. With the reframing of house, we got rid of the duplex term, which is in the current ordinance. That's just, the only change to 9 is that one right there, to update to the new language. No changes to the remainder of 9. In the use standards, Article 11, some of these are no longer relevant. Adult foster care home definitions and things. They've been amended. In this case, there were special regulations if a vehicle service station was in the downtown. The commission said they don't want vehicle service stations in the downtown, therefore the regulations for that are no longer required. So a lot of these tie together. That's why we have to kind of do a lot of things at once, because they go hand in glove. Some changes to update to new language. Again, the old current ordinance reads hospitals, sanatoriums, clinics, nursing and rest homes and institutions for human care. With a new definition of hospital uses, we can get rid of the long string of terms we don't use anymore. That happens across a lot of these. These office building regulations are now part of the new design requirements, so that can be removed here. Things of that nature throughout this section. Then in 12, the only change is, as I stated, taking the planned unit development, which is currently about 30 pages in the middle of Article 11, and making it a standalone chapter, because it really needs to be, if you need to use it, you need to be able to find it. We're making it visible. That is the, again, speed through summary of everything outside of the controversial R1.
Right.
If the commission and the public don't have questions about those things, don't have issues moving them forward, the commission could recommend adoption of all of that, not the R1 question, or leave it as is and come back to that for future conversation at a later meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. How do you guys feel?
I think my recommendation would be to push forward. It's probably not the cleanest way to do it, but to push forward, I'll speak up more. All of the proposed amendments aside from those to the districting. And then, as was commented many times from the public, folks didn't feel like they had enough notice to present their feelings. So maybe we push forward everything besides the changes to Article 3, and then come back at next month's meeting for additional public comment on Article 3 and make our recommendation at that point.
If I may make a comment, Article 3 is a lot of
Yeah,
things, including the entire table.
But specifically the
everything
ones
else.
regarding the R1.
Do you
or the
mean
district
like
changes.
just section 3.1, the R1 and the corresponding parts of the table, or all of Article 3?
All of Article 3.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood.
I could support that. I think what we need to come back to is R1, but I'm fairly aligned with that.
I don't feel that I'm ready to vote tonight on that. I don't. I think I feel unsettled. So I don't feel like just jumping ahead and doing some and leaving some. I don't know. I don't feel like jumping ahead and doing some of it tonight and then reversing back and talking about stuff we didn't go through with tonight. I just feel like the whole thing is unsettled. So I don't think we should make any motions to pass anything tonight. I'm also usually one of the people on this board that seems to go in the other direction. I don't know why, but that's good because that's what we like, is that we're different thinking. I absolutely agree with the R1. I don't think anything should change. I absolutely love the city streets being quiet and the homes being very family oriented and the neighbors being very neighborly. I think it's rare. I think it's one thing that makes Big Rapids so special. I absolutely agree with all of your arguments.
God bless you. Thank you.
Dr. Thompson?
I just, to throw this thought out, not to debate it, but just to throw the thought out. Because I know we'll come back next month and talk more about it, because I do agree, given the level of dialogue today, we can't move forward until we've really gotten to a point where we may not all, just have, a single approach to this, but we've got to get a lot closer than where we are right now. But I just want to throw this thought out there, is that societally, the whole framework and the whole concept of family is changing just a bit, right? Children are staying home a lot longer. They're coming back. They're going out getting jobs and coming back, right? So a lot of the conversation around the ADU wasn't necessarily to rent out and then have just a lot of randomness happens. It also allows and gives homeowners the opportunity to utilize their property in a way where it's not about making a profit, but it's also utilizing your property to conform to sort of this new way that families are kind of living and dealing with each other. I think we all have seen, I don't know if it's State Farm, the She Shed commercials, right? And a lot of the way that, people are putting a lot of different uses for, people are going to Home Depot, for goodness sake, and Lowe's and buying sheds and converting these things into beautiful, beautiful additions to homes. So we are not, and I am by no means suggesting that we're building these ADUs to increase rentals and bringing in all these, but it also allows opportunities for families to kind of still live in the same areas and utilize this property in ways that traditionally we may not have had to do before. I don't necessarily want my 37-year-old son moving into the basement anymore, right? But if I did have the opportunity as to not disrupt the neighborhood, as to not change the beautification of the neighborhood, as not to have it more rowdy and some of the concerns that I'm hearing, we're still talking about beautification. And we're still talking about how do we elevate and kind of
adapt to changing societal norms, right? So I hear you, and I am by no means in a position where I think that we're there to vote just yet, but I just wanted to at least throw out a concept that maybe when we come back in a few weeks, we can look at it from different perspectives and not so much, and don't get offended, but the boogeyman kind of perspective, you know, like you were, some of the comments that we're hearing, right? It's not all negative. So maybe there's some things that we can change in the verbiage. We can make it much more strict. But I also would have loved to allow homeowners the opportunity to beautify and leverage their properties in ways that actually kind of represents the way that they're living now. So like I said, I'm just throwing that out there so that when we come back, we have some other ways of looking at it and some other opportunities that we can talk through. But I hear you. And I know that we have to have, you know, it's a lot more work to be done. So I am in no position to even think that we're in a position to vote on anything right now. But I think that this was a great conversation today that we're going to build from, and we're going to get a lot closer. And I don't care how long it takes. As a community, we've got to come closer on this.
Anybody else?
I'll make a quick statement, basically echoing what you've said. I tend to agree. I mean, I want to move forward with things, but I think we should wait on voting. But I also agree that I think we sometimes take for granted what family means, and things look different for everybody. So I think what's right for one person is not right for another person. So, and I love Big Rapids, and I want to live here. I want my kids to live here forever, but there has to be growth here, and there has to be development, and that might not look like what it's always looked like, but I think it deserves a little bit more discussion, so.
Okay, I think what I'm hearing is a fairly general, consensus that we all agree to tabling at least some of this. And if you aren't ready to move on any of it, then I would entertain a motion to table the entire.
I don't want to prolong it, but I would actually make a motion that we table the discussion, table all of our motions at this point until we can get, because to Paula's point, they're also interrelated. And what I would hate to do is kind of sparse and parcel out pieces, and then we come back a few months later and then find ourselves back in this discussion again. I just don't think that we're in a position to vote on any of it right now, but that's just my personal opinion. So I would actually propose that we table the discussion.
One other comment too. I cannot thank our staff enough.
Oh,
Because
heck
this is
yeah,
a
absolutely.
ridiculous
It's a
amount of
lot.
work, and you guys have done such an awesome job, and
It's a lot.
I hate to push this off longer. And it's not for your lack of effort or trying, and we appreciate all you do. And so but I also tend to agree with Dr. Thompson.
Okay, so is that a motion, Dr. Thompson?
It was a poorly phrased motion.
So I have-
Oh, there's a motion in the.
Oh,
There's a
shoot.
sample motion.
I gotta read it. Where's the one that just kind of? And then it's,
Yeah.
oh, that's the one I was looking at. Okay, I motion that we table this discussion or any of our votes until more information comes to the table and we reach a more universal kind of decision on the proposed amendments, and we pause to process this information to a later date. I just completely fudged that again.
No, you're
But that's
good.
okay.
I made an error.
And
in
I
my
put the
phrasing.
glasses on and still couldn't read it, so.
Could I get support?
Support that.
All right, we've got a motion, we have support. I would take a roll call.
Boozy,
Yes.
McLeod,
Yes.
Epley,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Montgomery,
Yes.
Jane.
Yes. Okay, so we'll table that for now. We actually do have a couple of other pieces of business we have to get to tonight. So let's move on to general business. A, it's a site plan approval extension for 614 South State Street. And if anybody, thank you guys all for coming and participating. If you want to take off now, we won't be offended.
And thank you.
How will we know?
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's the same day and time every month.
So how long before we need to come back?
How are you?
Paula, can you answer when do they get notice? You said,
It depends on when,
I
we
think
do
we
it
do
at the
that
next meeting.
every third Wednesday.
Yeah,
right?
are we gonna go through another information, log or?
yeah, we're not going to be making any movement on this without more public participation. So,
Thank you all very much for your time.
okay, Paula, I think we could still maybe be home by 9.
I believe the next two should go relatively quickly.
Okay.
I apologize, the staff report came to you today. You didn't get it in your packet. It was an oversight on my part. You got the attachments, but not the staff report. Back in December of last year, the commission approved with conditions a site plan for a new Wendy's. They want to raise and rebuild. Conditions in the construction world did not align with their schedule this year, so they're requesting an extension of their site plan review approval. It was granted in February. The ordinance says you have to move forward, begin construction within a year. They won't meet that. They're asking to extend that deadline until June 30 of next year. Staff thinks that that should be done. There's a letter from them, the original letter granting the site plan review and minutes from that meeting attached. I'm happy to answer any questions, but it's pretty straightforward. It's a weird world out there.
Yeah, no
Staff
kidding.
thinks it should be granted.
Right. I mean, everything takes twice
They-
as long. it seems
They
like.
say they have no changes to their site plan. They need to delay it. Otherwise, if this isn't granted and they want to move forward, they
To go through it all.
just
again.
bring the exact same plans back to you again.
I would move that we grant the extension to June 30th.
So I have a motion by Mr. Boosie and a support by Ms. Upley. And I would take a roll call vote on that.
McLeod,
Yes.
Heffley,
Yes.
Boozy,
Yes.
Jane,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
and Montgomery.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now we have one other piece of business.
We do.
Our
This-
annual organizational meeting, my last act as your chair.
Almost, you
Oh,
still,
wait, we need to vote on
you
that
see this
tonight.
meeting to its close.
Yeah.
Okay, every year we do 4 things at the annual organizational meeting. It's supposed to be in September. I always catch it last minute. 2 years ago, we did it in October. That's how last minute I am, but we're on time. So here we go. Sorry, I'm still yelling, because that's where my headspace is. Officers, we start with officers. There are 4 officers we need to appoint: chairperson who runs the meeting, vice chair who runs it, the chair can't be here, secretary who gets an email from Emily and I every month saying, we finished the minutes, can you read them? And then the recording secretary, Emily, who prepares the minutes. We need to appoint people to those. Currently, those offices are filled by Chair Jane, Vice Chair Eppley, and Secretary Montgomery. Each office can be held by one person for 3 terms concurrently. Chair Jane is termed out, so we will need to appoint a new chair. Everything else is open. I recommend that you
Yes,
reappoint Emily to be
let's
recording
take care of that.
secretary. She does a
Guys,
great
I
job.
appreciate it.
Is everybody on board with Emily being the recording secretary? So
I'll be
that
here.
at least
I'd
is
like
done.
to stay as the secretary.
Is
and-
Emily still on board though?
I'm still here. I'm still here.
We have a volunteer to remain as secretary. I would nominate Ms. Epley to be our next chair, and I also would ask or nominate Ms. Thompson to be a vice chair, but I think any of you would be
I
wonderful.
don't know, I said yes, but then, I don't know. after this last
Hey,
meeting.
I can't hear Telling you what, I
I'm
mean,
looking forward
the
to the next
marijuana thing
one.
was rough, but it's been rougher lately, I feel like.
I think we should bring it up again.
Yeah. Okay.
Can we confirm terms?
I have them. I brought them with me. I apologize. I didn't get I got to that email today. And by the time I got there, I was like, I will see her before she will see the email. There was a question about, people's terms on the board. Okay, this is a really outdated one. Dr. Thompson, your term expires in May of next year. Rory's is a few years from now. Chris, also May of next year, although I hear that there's a likelihood you might be leaving us earlier if you get elected to the city, to the county commission.
I mean, it's really up to the mayor and the city manager. I serve at their pleasure, but I certainly would not be in any sort of officer's position at the very minimum. But no, my intention is to step down next year. Yeah,
Okay.
or maybe see where else I could be useful. Besides getting screamed at in this room.
So no, those are the ones. Megan, your first term is also up in May of next year. You can serve up to 3 consecutive terms on the planning commission. So we'd love to have you again.
If I'm not elected county commissioner.
Are you running for county? This is news to me.
No, I'm not.
I heard a nomination. Was the nomination accepted?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a nomination to replace Megan as vice chair?
I'll do it through May.
Okay, thank you. Well, you actually all have to agree. I don't know that we need a roll call vote, but you can all voice vote.
And then I would just suggest that we, make a mental note that I think next year at this time, we get Jacob into the officers lineup as well, maybe secretary or something, or vice chair, and keep it.
Depends on my availability with the fire department.
Yeah, well, everything does, my man. Players don't know our schedules. Okay, so what would you?
A voice vote on that is fine if you want to. The slate that was proposed was new chairperson Megan Epley, vice chair Dr. Casey Thompson, secretary Sarah Montgomery, and recording secretary Emily Schmansky.
Okay, a roll call vote on that?
Voice vote's fine.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes.
All right, we have a few other pieces of quick business here we have to do. Appoint those. We review the planning commission budget.
Congratulations.
All right,
Wow.
you have a budget.
Yay.
We have $500 for travel expenses, $1,500 for training, $700 for membership fees. The membership fees get paid at the beginning of the year. Everyone is a member of the Michigan Association of Planning. You should
That's why you
get,
get those magazines.
you get magazines, you get
Emails.
discounted access to other things, etc. It's important for the city to do. So we do that. The training, we try to move that around. This budget is also for the DBA, though they don't get to talk about it. We try to do some training and invite people. Last year, the ZBA was invited to attend training. 2 of the ZBA members took us up on that, got some good training. Couple years, we've brought people in, we've sent people to things, so we have that available. If there's interest, I know Emily has been working hard on a training strategy to make sure we keep up with things. So we'll circle back to that. And then if you ever wanted to go to a conference or whatever, we will pay for you to go. If it's an overnight, we will pay for your hotel. We will pay for your meals. We want you to have it all the advantage to get the training you need to do your job. So we have a budget for that. That's approved by the city commission, but the ordinance says we have to talk about it. So
Okay.
budget.
Do we need to, just give a thumbs up on that?
Yep. If there's anything, know that money's out there.
Mhm.
You're aware of
Yeah.
training. We can bring you training opportunities. We try to periodically, but we will do better at that. Take advantage of the resources that the city commission assigns to us. Finally, schedule of meetings. We have to set the meetings for the next calendar year. Historically, the Big Rapids Planning Commission meets on the 3rd Wednesday of each month at 6:30 p.m. I listed those dates there. If that is still a good day and time, we can approve that and close out the organizational meeting. Thank you, everyone, for your time and attention.
I'm good with those items if you guys are. I would love to see training opportunities, we try, I was going to suggest, we had a great training session where we brought some people in. We also tried to do a Zoom one And
They're doing those in
even mixed
person
bag.
again.
You really liked yours. We did not.
I had a feisty group. Yeah,
The
my
rest
group
of
was good.
ours did
don't
not
think I could
enjoy
even-
it.
Yeah.
But we'd like to see more opportunities, even if that's just opportunities we pass up. You know, I still like opportunities for training and advancement, just
Absolutely.
because we're, it's there, we should. be using it.
And sometimes untraditional training too, right? Because today, conflict resolution or
That's a great point.
communication. So it doesn't have to necessarily be zoning policy, but just.
We focus on that and as
Manage.
staff, but we can absolutely broaden our horizon there. There's
If
one,
everybody's comfortable with that.
we're talking, we've been,
Things would be
the
good.
city commission has brought up the idea of updating the city's comprehensive plan, otherwise known as the master plan, though I don't like that term. In the next year or two, the Michigan Association of Planning does a really great comprehensive plan training, like before you embark on this, here's everything you need to know about what it is, how it works, how you go through the process. That was kind of earmarked in the back of my head, maybe for the spring, to get them in as we think about that process moving forward. Maybe do that with the city commission as well, so they're all well versed in the work that you guys will be doing. But there's lots of things we can look at other opportunities and bring them more often.
Okay, good.
Or Emily will, because she's our training expert.
Well, if there's nothing else, as my last official action as your chair, I will bring this meeting of the Big Rapids Planning Commission to a close.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate you and your service as chair.
It's a real traumatic thing to volunteer for something out of the goodness of your heart and then be treated like you are a scoundrel for doing it.
Nice
Like
job, you guys,
purposely
all
went
of
out of
you.
your way to
Yeah.
to hurt your neighbors. It's pretty funny.
Absolutely.
You know what? Let's not even